Harvey Weinstein no longer has a juggernaut of power and ability to intimidate and victimize other people. It's done. It's over. Is that justice? Absolutely.
This week on Between You and Me, I sit down with Genie Harrison, a California employment lawyer who represents survivors of sexual assault, discrimination, and retaliation. Today, Harrison's work is impacting some of the biggest cases of the Me Too era, including taking on Kevin Spacey and Harvey Weinstein. Why did you decide to get into the line of work that you're in, the specific aspect of law?
I was a victim of child sex abuse. I've been sexually harassed. I've been discriminated against. I've been retaliated against. It's kind of all happened. So I know what it's like to go from victim land and then pack your bags and make the journey to survivor land and then make the journey to thriving land. And I share my story with my clients, and I help walk them through all of this, and I help them take their power back.
What is it that fuels you when you're going up against Weinstein and Spacey?
What motivates me is going after the people who take advantage of others. I just saw that Harvey Weinstein's new criminal lawyers are saying that he's been victimized by the Me Too movement.
When you see a headline like that, how does that make you feel?
Angry. That's how it makes me feel.
Is there any justification for that?
No.
I mean, can somebody on the other side of it, can they own that feeling of victimization, do you think? Or is it just
No, Harvey Weinstein cannot. There's no victimization with Harvey Weinstein. He is the victimizer. He is the perpetrator, all right? So, no, I reject that with regard to him. With his team, in my opinion, using this and trying to co-opt it, which is what's happening in my mind. I think they're trying to go with up is down and down is up.
There's a precedent for this at the moment, right? Weinstein is one thing, but we saw a Supreme Court justice confirmed, in Brett Kavanaugh, who sort of similarly tried to, use that narrative of I'm being victimized and this is unfair, this is being put upon me. When you see that happening, does it almost feel like, I don't know, not just an uphill battle, but that it's a losing battle?
No, absolutely the opposite. In fact, this is the same refrain I hear in every single one of the cases where I represent my clients. And I constantly hear that everything that happened is my client's fault, it's her fault, what did she wear? She had drinks. I mean, this is something that we've heard over and over and over again as women and people who have been victimized, right? The table is always being turned on us and we're being blamed. And so I deal with that in court all the time. And the truth has a way of outing itself, and that's my job.
In the case of Harvey Weinstein, there's been rumors of a global settlement in the tune of $44 million. Do you think that financial reparations are enough when it comes to the survivors of Me Too?
I know that prosecutors make those decisions based on what level of proof exists and can I meet the beyond a reasonable doubt standard. And that's with regard to the criminal justice system. I decide to prosecute cases on behalf of victims and get the accountability that can be obtained, which is significant, all right? As a result of the fact that there are civil cases that have come forward and been filed and are proceeding against Harvey Weinstein, Bob Weinstein, the Weinstein Company. The Weinstein Company is in bankruptcy. Harvey Weinstein no longer has a juggernaut of power and ability to intimidate and victimize other people. It's done. It's over. Is that justice? Absolutely. Okay, so there are different definitions of justice.
What practical pieces of legislation do you want to see passed that you think were past due?
The first one here in California, which was passed but vetoed by Governor Brown, was a piece of legislation extending the deadline to file a sexual harassment claim with the California Administrative Agency from 1 year to 3 years.
There's a big difference, right?
That's a huge difference. And so we know victims of trauma have a very difficult time coming forward that quickly. That legislation is working its way again through Sacramento, and we have great hope that Governor Newsom will sign that piece of legislation once it's passed. So that's a crucial piece of legislation in California. One of the other things that's happening federally in DC is called the FAIR Act. And what that seeks to do is prevent companies and employers from forcing employees to sign an arbitration agreement, which extracts the case, the sexual harassment case, from the court into the private system. So the FAIR Act tries to prevent employers from forcing that on employees before the dispute ever occurs. What happens is, for most people, when they go and apply for a job, they sign all of this preliminary hiring documentation.
And half the time people don't even read them. You're just, there's like, it's one form after another, and you're like, oh my God, just get me my badge already, and where's the free coffee? Yeah.
And it's a bunch of legalese, and it doesn't make sense to virtually anyone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and by design, right? Like, it's
course.
dense by design.
Of course. So what is usually in there is an arbitration agreement. So before you've ever been sexually harassed at work or anything like that, or discriminated against, etc., you're signing away your right to be able to bring a case in court in front of a jury. And it's very difficult for people to understand what they're doing at that time. So the FAIR Act actually says to the employer, nope, you can't do that. If you, the employer and the employee, want to agree to go to arbitration after the bad stuff happens, then you guys can talk about that. But you can't just force it on the employee to begin with.
I mean, how likely do you think that something like the FAIR Act is at being passed?
Well, there has been traction, and definitely there are a tremendous number of sponsors in the House, and Lindsey Graham was actually interested and held hearings, because forced arbitration is forced on everyone, consumers, not just employees, all right? And it's to the detriment of human beings, and people are starting to catch on to that. So there's been traction, but would it be signed by the current president? I don't think it would. So we'll see. But hopefully...
Well, the president shrouded in NDAs, it doesn't sound like it's this kind of deal, yeah.
And what we remember from Stormy Daniels is that, in fact, there was an arbitration agreement. Remember? That's how all of this began with regard to her, is that she was stuck in arbitration and she tried to invalidate that provision.
Right.
So that's how they keep it secret. And when you think about it, my client, Sandy Brahal, who was Harvey Weinstein's former personal assistant, when she went at the age of 25, 26, and got that job and signed all that paperwork, she had no idea that Harvey Weinstein had been victimizing women for decades, allegedly, right?
You hate that word.
I hate that word. She was forced to sign an agreement that had an arbitration provision in it. And that's the way the problem gets perpetuated.
You're like signing away your rights before you even realize what you're doing, because you can't foreshadow that sort of problem.
You can't, and the company's not telling her that Harvey Weinstein has been doing this to women for allegedly decades, and are you sure you really want to sign away your rights to bring this in court and then be forced to actually do this in a confidential setting?
Do you think that something similar will happen maybe around forced arbitration? Do you think that there is the will here in Hollywood where a lot of this secret, shady, behind closed doors behavior happens and has thrived for it to change? Are you seeing that?
Well, we are seeing that, for example, specifically in tech companies. So Uber came forward and said, we're not going to enforce the forced arbitration agreements. And some of the other tech companies have done so as well. They're recognizing it's actually bad press when they realize that they're hiding this bad behavior behind forced arbitration and keeping it secret, which perpetuates the problem.
Right, they can't be sort of, on the one hand saying how open and transparent we are and look at our glass offices, like, we're see-through. And then on the other hand, forcing people to sign these deals which invalidate their rights.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So I think that change is occurring, and I think we all wish that the maximum amount of change would happen immediately with a magic wand, but we know that it doesn't happen that way. And so, what is it? The moral arc of the universe bends towards justice, but maybe just not as quickly as we would like.
Thank you for watching Between You and Me. There are plenty more episodes, so you can click here and subscribe to watch more.